All right, good Friday evening, Mid-Michigan. Chief Meteorologist Chris Easlick with your Friday forecast update. Of course, all the talk this weekend, potentially our first winter weather of the season. It will not be the storm of the century. It will not be the worst snow you've ever seen, but it is the first snow of the season, and that always brings out many feelings, whether they're good feelings or bad. So as we get this going, I'll just test the sound, make sure that everything's good. My phone is echoing on me, so that is a good sign. And Caleb, our nightly watcher, Caleb Marquis from Adrian, Michigan, always tells us if the sound isn't working. So the fact that Caleb says we're good to go, we are good to go. Okay, so your sky tracker tonight, not terribly exciting. We've got a few showers trying to move through, nothing too crazy, but you did not sign up for just showers tonight. You are interested in what is happening this weekend. And so what we are watching for is this system that is out to the west of us, currently getting itself together through portions of Montana. We've got it down to Wyoming and also the Dakotas. You can actually see the system spinning itself in northern Montana, and that's where we're headed. So this is going to dive off to the south and east as we go through tonight. And then as we go through the day on Saturday, it is going to take a track that is roughly to the south of Michigan. But even though that low pressure center is going to the south of Michigan, we are going to be on the cold side of that system. Now, if you were watching our stream the last couple of nights, we've talked about a couple of different scenarios. And last night we talked about how it was going to be the first night we actually got some weather balloons into that system. And once we had that happen, I told you at the very least, even if it wasn't a good consensus, we would start moving towards more of a consensus than what we had. We would get rid of some of these solutions that were far to the north. We would get rid of some of these solutions that were far to the south. And it seems like we're starting to do that, and it's actually favoring more of a southward shift with a lot of the information that we've gotten today. So I would say the best snowfall potential seems to be more towards areas like Lansing, Jackson, into Detroit, right in between that I-96, I-94 corridor and perhaps down to the state line. And I'll show you that as we go forward, but there have been some developments as we've gone through the last couple of days. So Nate says he's hoping for about 4 feet of snow. Nate, I think I would take the under on that. Good to see you, Deborah. Tristan. Good to have you on the stream tonight. So let's just start first, I think, with the hour by hour, because that's the most important. If we go through Saturday itself, we actually think tomorrow is going to be a pretty nice day, at least initially. It'll be cool to start, but we actually get up to about the upper 30s and low 40s for the afternoon. Wouldn't be shocked if we keep the sunshine around longer, if some of us sneak into the mid 40s. So Saturday itself, if you're flexible in your plans, I don't necessarily think that it's a bad day to get anything done. It's probably not the nicest that we've had when you compare it to the last couple of weeks, but it will be a decent day overall. But here's where things get interesting, and we've been talking about this the last couple of nights on the stream, is you've got these temperatures at 7 o'clock on Saturday. They're down in about the mid to upper 30s. Even as we fast forward to about 1:30 in the morning, they haven't really moved all that much. They're still right around that mid to upper 30s range, and you combine that with the ground temperatures that are still pretty warm. And again, that's just another hurdle we have to overcome in order to get snowfall accumulation. So you see the snow starting to move in, and keep in mind, this is a computer model, so it's a simulation. But even though this is starting as snow, I think if we have air temperatures like this, there'll be melting snowflakes as they come down, and I wouldn't necessarily rule out some rain mixing in, at least to start with this event before we start to cool down a little bit more. Even if it's not our surface temperatures, the air aloft gets a little bit cooler, and I think we'll have a better chance at snow. But even as we fast forward here to about 7 o'clock on Sunday morning, you'll also notice that our temperatures are still above freezing. And now not only are we above freezing, but we're adding daylight to the mix. And so November, it doesn't seem like it because we've had these earlier sunsets since we had the time change, but your sun angle is still pretty strong in the month of November compared to December or January. And so that can sometimes be the difference in melting some of this snow as well, even in the absence of all the other factors of the warm ground and everything like that. So going through Sunday itself, I think the main window we've got for sort of the system snow is roughly about 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, and then up to about noon. And then after that, you'll notice we start really getting this northeasterly flow off of Lake Huron. And I think that is where we may have a chance to get sort of the second half of this event. We get the system snow, then that starts to lighten up during the day on Sunday. And we also talked about in order to get some accumulation with ground temperatures this warm, we actually need some really good snowfall rates. And during the day, it seems like things lighten up, at least for most areas. So that's not going to help either. But what I think could make up some of the difference, some of what I think could get at least a few areas over the hump, is you've got this northerly and northeasterly flow off of Lake Huron. And while the lakes are still pretty warm, they can still lead to some of these snowfall bands that could be a little bit heavier on a localized basis. And so if we can get some really good snow showers that form off of the lake, and assuming mixing is not involved, assuming we stay cold enough for just outright snow showers off of Lake Huron, I think there is at least some potential for a few coatings here and there on Sunday. And I think especially going into Sunday night and also into Monday. Notice we've got this lake effect band that develops on Sunday night, and you'll notice what time this develops, closer to about 10 o'clock. And what are the temperatures doing closer to 10 o'clock? Well, of course, they are getting colder, and we keep that going into Monday morning, and now we're starting to make progress with those temperatures. We're starting to cool down. We're starting to get some of that lake effect snow in a more perfect window when it combines some of those cooler temperatures and maybe some enhanced snowfall rates, because we're getting that good juice off of Lake Huron. And then we also get some snow showers through the day on Monday. We've got 20s and even low 30s in the thumb closer to Lake Huron, where the water temperatures are still warm. So I think there are going to be these little windows where we thread the needle, and we will have a chance to actually get some accumulation. I just think the big problem with this event specifically is going to be the fact that it's not uniform. And I think we're going to have certain areas that may get a quick coating of snow. And then I also think it's going to be potentially in a situation where you get to the next town over, and the next town over has hardly anything, or it's a dusting here and there, a trace of snow here and there. And so you've got certain areas that say, wow, we got some snow this weekend, and others just said, yeah, we've got some flakes, and other than that, not so much. And then you'll also notice on Monday late morning, we've got what appears to be a decent lake effect snow band that's developing off of Lake Huron as well. And I think after we get a night in the 20s from Sunday night into Monday, and then again Monday night into Tuesday, we might have a better chance to get some of that accumulation primarily on grassy surfaces. But later Monday night as we fall, I think we'll have a chance to cool off even more, because then we'll have what was a cold start to Monday, followed by a cooler day on Monday, and then a cooler night going into Tuesday. And so if you have wet roads during the day, I think that makes you a little susceptible, mostly on elevated surfaces going into Tuesday morning, where things could get a little bit icy. So we did put a snowfall map together, and I will tell you up front, it's not my favorite map that we've ever come up with, but we have to kind of do this because it's more of a broad scenario for the entire area. And so what we decided to do is we just made a trace to 2 inches. It's not a huge range, but it's kind of over a broad area. We tried to break it down a little bit further. We think this northwesterly area, Roscommon and Ogemaw, Clare and Gladwin counties, we think those areas might get a little bit less than the system snow, at least right up front. And keep in mind, this is only through Sunday. This does not include any potential lake effect Sunday night and Monday. This is only for Sunday itself. And so I think most areas on Sunday, from Saturday night when it begins through Sunday itself, I think are probably going to be closer to that trace to 1 inch range rather than the 2. The reason we put the 2 inch range on here is because we wanted to account for some of those lake effect bands that I showed you. I think, again, even if they're a bit heavier, they're still going to run into some of those ground temperatures through Sunday, but I think there's at least localized pockets that we can get to. And so we just wanted to be as thorough as possible, but a lot of that will depend on the exact wind direction. A lot of it will depend on where exactly those lake effect bands set up. So we did want to just simplify things. We didn't want to overcomplicate it. So we went with a trace to 2 inches in this gray zone. This area right here is going to be for where some of those heavier bands have at least a slightly better chance to set up. And then I think there is some wiggle room that I will show you this in a second, but I think there's potential in Tuscola County as well. You might have even noticed it when we were going through the hour by hour, that there might be a band that extends a little bit farther inland through Tuscola County as well, if the models are onto something with that particular location. But I think the same could be true if it decides to come through the Saginaw Bay, or it could be something that comes along our northeasterly zones too. We've put these areas in almost as more of a precaution. There is more of a dry air mass on northern Lake Huron than down in this direction. But we thought, you know, lake effects can be tricky. And it's this area, just knowing from experience, for the last 10 years that I've been here, this area can be sneaky sometimes when you get a northeasterly wind. So I think we can refine this a little bit more tomorrow. But this is the big thing. And I've mentioned it, but if you're just joining the stream, we put this here. Highly variable accumulations, and that's based on our ground temperatures and snow rates. Again, there are going to be a lot of areas, in my opinion, that aren't going to get much accumulation at all. And then there's going to be a few areas down the road that may get a quick coating. It probably will not stick around long. It might be enough to coat the grass early Sunday, and then by the time lunchtime comes around, it's completely history. So it's just going to be one of those events. Now I'm going to show you the actual snowfall model, and this goes all the way through Sunday evening. And this is where the bulk of that system seems to be setting up. So if you were on the stream at the beginning, I talked about how these models have been favoring, ever since we got weather balloons up into them, how they've been favoring more of a southerly solution, and this shows exactly that. I talked about areas like Lansing, Jackson, down to I-94, into Detroit. That even extends over into places like Kalamazoo. Should be mostly southeast of Grand Rapids, but this is the primary zone, and it's important to know that this does not include melting. This does not include melting. This is basically what falls, and it's in this area right here we think is the greatest snowfall potential around the state. Now, model solutions would probably tell you that those areas that are shaded in blue, something on the order of perhaps about 3 to 4 inches of snow. But if you factor in the melting, it's probably closer to about 1 to 2, maybe 3 if you really get up there. And then we'll see kind of some of the localized factors that happen as this event unfolds. Could there be some areas where snowfall rates get enhanced with some extra sources of lift, or something that can just, it's almost like you've got, trying to think of the best way to describe it. It's almost like your grass grows with water, but if you throw fertilizer on it, the grass grows a little bit faster. Snowfall can occasionally get some areas of lift that sort of supercharge what is already falling. And so occasionally some of that can happen. But I think this area right here has the best potential for some of that snow through early Sunday. And then I also want to show you why we've included that area that was highlighted a little bit differently around the Great Lakes. This is what I'm talking about with that band that was showing up through Tuscola County. And if you look close, there's that little area in Iosco and Alcona County too, in that region. So that's why, at least as a precautionary step going into Saturday, we included those northeasterly zones as well. So we'll see if that holds true tomorrow. Lake effect's a little bit trickier because there's a lot of small scale processes involved. And so sometimes those can be the most dramatic shifts from one model to the next. And so, we'll kind of see where that goes as we get the information through Saturday, because we still practically have a whole day of weather data that comes in before we just have to let the forecast ride. I don't think we're going to see any dramatic changes from this point forward, but I did want to at least take you through Monday to show that we've got things that we're watching. We won't necessarily get into snowfall amounts for Monday until we get past Sunday. So I think for simplicity's sake, just because Monday's lake effect and so much can change between now and then, our snowfall map will get us through Sunday. And then what we will do is we will reassess through the day on Sunday and then start focusing on Monday. But I think that flow on Monday, if we back up just to the hour by hour forecast, most of us are not going to see snow on Monday. You see it shift to more of a northerly flow on Monday, and so we're likely going to see most of the impacts in the central and eastern thumb. That is typically where we see northerly flow have the biggest impact, and it's in those areas. So we're talking about places like Port Hope, Harbor Beach, right along the shoreline there. But then that also, this time of year, can be a little bit trickier because if you get up to the beach areas that are closest to the water, sometimes those areas can experience rain because they're getting that warmth off Lake Huron, and then you go maybe a mile inland and it changes from rain or a rain and snow mix to just outright snow. And so it's just a really complex setup, as it typically is during the early parts of November here as we're transitioning between those warm seasons into the cold season. So that's something that it's just one of many factors, it feels like, with the system. I've talked to a lot of meteorologist friends around the state, and pretty much everyone feels like they're done with this system already. Let's just get this thing over with. Let's get it out of here, and let's move on. And if we're going to do this snow thing, let's make it cold so we don't have to worry about ground temperatures and things like that. The positive side is I think roads through the weekend are mostly going to be in good shape. Saturday's fine. Sunday, I think during the day you're fine too. I would say we need to be a little bit more aware of roads Sunday night, Monday night, going into Tuesday. I think that's when elevated surfaces, for instance, if you take the Zilwaukee Bridge during the morning, if that's part of your commute, if you take a lot of highways, overpasses, those are the areas that I think are going to be most susceptible to slippery conditions following any winter weather we see late this weekend and early next week. So Monday and Tuesday mornings, we've got wind chills in the teens. That is a factor for bus stops those 2 days. Damp areas, like I mentioned, could refreeze if untreated. That would be primarily that Sunday night and Monday night time frame. I think more likely Monday night rather than Sunday night after we've already had a day of cold weather. And then highs in the middle to upper 30s on Monday and Tuesday, which is going to be about 15 degrees below where we typically are this time of year. So that's the big summary. I will see if we've got any other comments or questions. If you have a question that you've been holding off, feel free to throw that in there. Tim says, I'm hoping not too much of the localized snow. Tim, I really don't think so. I think anywhere you see more than an inch of accumulation is probably going to be more, I would say, more the exception rather than the rule. Just because we have that melting factor, we have temperatures that are above freezing much of the time. But again, we've got to prepare you for all scenarios, so we have to at least let you know that it's possible in certain areas. But again, I don't think this is a significant snowfall event. The numbers for our area have been trending downward, and that's without even considering some of the melting factor down below. Tristan says, like when meteorologists go live, we are liking it too. It's another chance to give you more detail than we can on the air. Let's see. If anybody else has anything, feel free to say that now. Otherwise, I'll end the stream here in just a minute so I can get our 10 o'clock newscast ready. Decent Friday night. While we're waiting, if anybody has anything to add, we will have better snowstorms. I promise that. If you're one of those who is really hoping for snow, you will end up getting better snowstorms than this throughout the winter. Good question. Derek Castleton, did the storm end up taking the north or southern track? Derek, good question. I mentioned it favored more of the southern scenario, so I'll pull that up right now. This is the accumulation without the numbers turned on because, again, these models that we have don't factor in the melting factor. And if you're just joining the stream, I think that's going to be, at least from our perspective, the weather person perspective, the meteorologist perspective, is we have to figure out how to communicate a scenario like this where what falls is going to be different than what it might appear to be on the ground. Because I think we'll have a couple of inches of snow fall. It's just how much of that is actually going to stick around after it makes contact with the ground. I think that is the biggest question. But yes, our models have generally gotten to a consensus over a more southern solution rather than the northerly solution. Greg says, is the thumb going to get any snow? You will at least see snow fall. But Greg, you ask a good question, because here is what it looks like going into Monday. Is I think especially try not to get caught up in the exact location, because we're not to a point where we can feel confident about the exact wind direction going into Sunday night and Monday. We're still a couple of days away from that. But I think it's worth showing you at least something that they're picking up on, is when we get that northerly flow and northeasterly flow coming off of Lake Huron, especially if you're in the thumb, you know how this works during the winter months. You can get some really good snow in northeasterly and northerly type scenarios. And so this model right here is picking up, especially into Sunday night and Monday, some lake effect snow bands that might be able to capitalize on better snowfall rates and cooler temperatures going into Sunday night and Monday. So I think that's what we need to watch. It's a little too early to say how much, because a lot of this data, we've got to clear some of that system snow out of the equation first to get a really good look at Monday. But I would say if we are cold enough, if we get cold enough on Monday night, or at least on Sunday night into Monday, and then we get some really good snowfall rates because we have colder air coming in on Monday, leads to a bigger difference between the air above and the water temperature below. If we can get a really good difference on Monday, get some really good snowfall rates, could we see a couple of inches of snow in the thumb? I don't think that's off the table. But again, I don't think this is going to be, Snowmageddon or anything like that. But we will update you throughout the weekend. So good question, Greg. If anybody else has anything to ask, feel free. Looks like Deborah is still with us. We've got more people on a Friday night. I actually thought we'd have less. But here's the 7-day, just while we wait, and I'll give it a couple of more minutes. So speak now if you have something. But if you're not ready for this to be permanent just yet, we've got some 40s next week. So chilly through about Veterans Day, and then Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. We start the climb back to at least closer to normal. Eric is going to South Bend, Indiana for the football game. Notre Dame versus Navy. That should be a fun game. Notre Dame's kind of had Navy's number lately, but we'll see. All right. Well, it looks like no questions are coming through. At least I'm not seeing any right now, but we will take a look at some of the comments after the stream shuts down. And so if there's any that I can answer for you, we'll certainly do that. But Greg, hopefully, I see you're still watching. At least that's what Facebook is telling me. So if that is the case, hopefully I answered your question, Greg. And otherwise, I think we are good to go. I hope you all have a good weekend. We'll have updates through the weekend. Meteorologist Stone Schaefer will be in on Saturday nights, and then Matthew Mondro Sunday morning as the system moves in, and then Stone will be there on Sunday night as well, and we'll of course be in touch with Stone through the weekend. We will see you then.